People in Africa, I think for a long time we have been ignorant when we hear about climate change. We thought of snow melting somewhere in the North Pole, but now that it has caught up with us, we are realizing, oh shit, we are also in it. It's affecting us.
Welcome back, everybody. Rich Baker, founder of Collective Responsibility, here today with another episode of the Sustainable Bastard Podcast. Through this podcast, I'm speaking with global professionals around the world about the work they're doing to try and solve the big challenges they face in their communities, environments, and economies. And with that, I'm really happy to have Joe Muturi here today with us to talk about the work that he's doing. He is the president of the global Slum Dwellers International Network and chairs the SDI board. He's a social activist with extensive experience in developing community and state-led projects for urban poor communities, where he builds relationships between programs and residents. Joe, it's great to have you here to talk about the work that you're doing down there.
Thank you very much, Rich, and thank you for having us. We are truly and deeply honored to be part of this podcast.
Pleasure. So as a starting point, a little about who you are and the work of SDI.
Briefly, like I mentioned before, my name is Joe Muturi. I describe myself as a community organizer, but I've got a background in counseling psychology. And what got me to this work, my late mother, where she was trading, I saw their stores being demolished 2 times. I think that made me very angry. And I became part of this Slum Dwellers movement who were angry at forced evictions, forced demolitions. That's why I found myself at SDI. So I joined this self-organizing movement for people to resist and to stop the forced evictions and demolitions. And the movement grew. And they became part of the larger Slum Dwellers International, where we are about, in the network, around 40 countries that push for, number one, secure land tenure, access to land, access to land justice. We also push for affordable, decent and affordable housing. And we also push for basic services as a right. You'll find when City Hall is doing a budget, these places are usually marginalized. So for us, we seek justice, and it's not to do things for them. It's to organize them, build capacity, network them, to be able to push and to set their own development agenda. So SDI has been there for this year we are celebrating 30 years. But how we do it is organize communities around savings groups, CBOs, women cooperatives, housing cooperatives, and data collection, mapping of the informal settlements. What are the services? What are the basic services? How many people use one water tap? How many people use one toilet? So basically, they're able to prioritize, and they become more proactive. We usually say, for example, Kenya got...
To be fair, a lot of people, when they hear about informal settlements or slums, they really just have a vague picture that it actually might have been a picture online. It might have been a picture through a nonprofit advertisement. It might have been something that, it's really quite distant for them. So can you tell me a little about what is an informal settlement and what are the day-to-day realities of the communities that are there, of the individuals that live in these communities?
Thank you, Rich. Important question. As we speak now, the UN Habitat is in the process of defining what an informal settlement is. But basically, an informal settlement, the common characteristics, number one, it's most of them are built in either reclaimed dump sites. They are built on inhabitable spaces like wetlands, dump sites, low-lying areas. Most of them, the use of materials is the cheapest materials that can be found. You are looking from just basic mud and mud like Kibera, the common characteristics. They use mud and corrugated iron sheets. Some places use carton, some use polythene bags, some use... Usually they are unplanned, and they are unplanned. They don't receive... And the common characteristics, they don't receive any form of service from the city. And the day-to-day life is, number one, lack of basic services, from connection to sanitation facilities. For something as simple, natural movement as taking up dump, it's either you have to pay, going to the toilet, you have to pay for the toilet facilities, or you find other creative means of relieving yourself. So, for example, most of the people Kibera, they go to the railway line. That's where they relieve themselves. Some go to the river. Some go to the bush. Some go behind their houses, relieve them on a plastic piece of paper. You have heard of flying toilets, and then they're able to fold the toilet and throw it around. So you are looking at number two, lack of basic services like water, access to clean water. This is something. Sometimes the water might be clean from the city authorities or the service providers. Sometimes a charitable NGO has brought in a water. But the other thing is lack of security. So muggings, house breakings is a daily occurrence. You are looking at spaces which are unplanned. There's a lot of illegal activities going on. There's brewing of illegal alcohol, which sometimes lead the electricity connection. The electricity connection is usually illegal. So they are prone to fire outbreaks. Every week there's a fire outbreak because of either illegal connection, somebody was brewing something, somebody was cooking using firewood, somebody was cooking using the kerosene stove which burst. So these are the daily. So the other characteristics you will find.
Sounds like a very unattractive place to live. Like you wouldn't, if you had an option, you wouldn't choose there. But I'm curious about a couple things. One is, are these settlements typically found on the outside of a major urban city, and the people living there are coming into the city for work, and therefore this is like the only place that they can afford? Or is this a generational reality that people have been marginalized for decades, a generation, and they're actually, this is something that they can't get away from through economic development, through economic opportunity? Like, I'm kind of trying to figure, because in Asia, a lot of these places tend to be very transitionary coming into the city, and there might be some generational there, but that's not the condition that they're hoping for. They're hoping to use that as a way to get out. Is that the same for the settlements that you're describing, or is this like really a generational reality that they never seem to escape?
If you're looking at Kibera, you are looking at Madare, you are looking at Mukuru, Korokosho, at least now we have third generation, fourth generation families. And these are people whose grandfathers settled here. I think, first of all, I would blame it on the failure of the system. Like, I will give you a practical example. My city, where I was born in Nairobi, everything was centralized. If you wanted to get an ID, if you wanted to get a good job, the good schools, everything was centralized. And I think the city, all the factories were centralized within the city. And I think the city was not prepared for all the people moving from the urban areas, from the rural areas, to come and look for unemployment. So the slums, as a result, grew. The city did have, they hadn't figured out their game plan for the growth and the sprawl of the city. So people found ingenious ways of getting these spaces. And we call them the structure owners. Because in essence, most of this is either private land or government land. So we call them, these are people who develop these shacks and structures. We call them structure owners. These are well-connected individuals, either within government. Basically, they are entrepreneurs. So if I give you, for example, and I can send you a research, if you go to Mukuru, this is a 2 billion Kenya shillings industry tax-free. Somebody we invest on thousands of these structures, where they get $30 per structure, tax-free every month. So the slums have grown. There's no more space. So people have started building on top of each other. They're adding structures on top. So that, number one, failure of the city. Number two, I'm looking at also, I'm saying it's not like this is something that is going to be there. I think there's a lot, every young man, whether in Kibera, and for me, I've been privileged to travel to Muslims globally. Whether they are talking Daravi or Rio or Krube in Sierra Leone, in Kibera, most of the young people, for them, is a struggle to get out. And I think a number of cities and national governments, there are attempts to upgrade, to improve, to bring in services, basic services. And I think there have been a push. There's a push from civil society. human rights activists, just for that decent, the human decency of bringing in water. So it's not cast on its own. I'm not going to say it's a generation and generation. People, there are initiatives to improve. There are initiatives for slum upgrading. The problem is that they are taking too long and they are too slow. So you find that this, and the other thing you asked was that most, if you look at, and I like giving practical example, they are not outside the city. They are usually within the city. They are usually in the proximity of their places of work. If you look at Kibera, most of the people who live in Kibera and Mukuru, these are people who provide labor in the industrial area because it's closer to industrial area. If you look at Madare, these are people who cross over on the other side of the road to work as watchmen, house servants in Modaiga, in those upmarket estates. So it's just proximity to, most of them are proximity to where we work, to where they go for work.
Proximity to work, got some generational issues, but you mentioned that this isn't, the changes, the improvements aren't happening fast enough. And I want to get into that because I'm curious what the role of government is. Is it a policy problem or is it a lack of resource problem? Because you mentioned the spaghetti, water pipes, you mentioned the electricity, like there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be built. And oftentimes what I find is the government doesn't have the money for it, or they rely upon overseas donors for the money. Is it a problem of regulation? Is it a problem of just deep-seated kind of intentional, like they don't really give a shit, or is it just they don't have the money to make the improvements, and that's the actual issue?
No, it's a mixture. It's a mixture of all the above that you have mentioned. Number one, system failure. Number two, political. Most of the decisions made in terms of development are political. These are marginalized areas when it comes to city hall budgeting. Where should we put the lights? Where should we improve the drainage? Where should we improve the sewer infrastructure? You'll find the preference is upmarket areas like Kilimani, the nice street lights. They more and more, like I said initially when I was introducing, these are areas which are faceless. These are areas which, number two, is also an attitude problem that we have a system, a city, both levels of national and city level government, which don't give a shit about its poor, where they live, how they live. That is the attitude. So when it comes to housing, specifically informal settlements in the pecking order, it doesn't even appear in the top 10. So it's all those challenges that you mentioned.
Getting into the work at SDI, what is that you guys are doing? What is the mission of the organization? And how are you helping to solve some of these problems that you mentioned? I mean, besides government not caring, not having the resources, just the complexity, like how do you approach these challenges and what's the goal or the mission of the organization?
So the goals of the organization is to improve the lives of the slum dwellers and to a large extent the urban poor. You realize if you walk around informal settlements, there are no streets, there are no addresses, and in turn, when let's say a youth group comes together, they want to do a car wash business or they want to do recycling. First of all, they ask for the address. These are places basically with no address. So our role and what we have been doing, first of all, is to map out all these informal settlements and to go deeper and to profile all these informal settlements. How many people, what is the population of these areas, who owns the land, what is the service like in these areas, what is the infrastructure that they lack in these areas. So one of the things we usually say, we are the only organization where we have data that is collected and mandated by the slum dwellers for themselves. So we map out with the help of the professionals, the planners, the architects. They're able to map out the entire settlement. They're able to understand the population densities. They're able even to go deeper into the household surveys, which we call enumeration. With this data and with the help of professionals, they're able to analyze, and from there, they're able to prioritize. So if we leave history and we have shown that when we leave this to the political class, what the political class is what 10% am I going to get into this project? That is why you hear people coming up with crazy, somebody would want to do a bridge where there's no river, somebody, their their priorities are totally different. So we push for communities, and with the data, they're able now to negotiate, they're able to leverage, they're able to go to City Hall. Look, it's 10,000 of us. We have the data. What we want, bring in water. We have very successful case studies. Bring in the water. We will provide the labor. We will provide the pipes. And the best thing of all, we will take care of your pipes. There won't be illegal connections. And at the end of the month, you'll get an income. Number two, we look at who owns this land. Is it public land or is it private land? So we go deep. How did this person acquire this land? So this settlement has been here for the last 50 years. Madare has been there for the last 50 years. But you will find Richard has a title which he acquired 3 years ago. How did you get tenure and get title for this land which was occupied? So we go to court, challenge that. The other thing, we work with governments. I think I mentioned that we receive a lot of shit from the holier than thou human rights organizations that point at everything that is wrong. And when we start working with government, and we have proven in many cities, when we work with government, the development is delivered faster because these are the people who have the taxes. They have access to the land. They have access, they own these utility companies. There's water company, the sewer company, they have resources, they have the technical manpower in the offices. So we say we work with government.
So with that in mind, you've been at this for many years. Do you think that the conditions are improving, worsening, or simply just evolving, in ways that are unexpected, sometimes good, sometimes bad? Like what's your view, and like what's driving the improvement, or what's driving the worsening of the situation?
The situation is not getting better. It's getting dire. The populations are increasing, and the situation is worsening now that we have the global climate challenge, where the lack of rains, the hots are becoming hotter, the flooding is getting much worse, comes with the loss of lives, loss of property, loss of housing, loss of livelihoods. So the situation is getting worse. There are efforts, but the efforts are not matching how the problem is growing.
A lot of times we're talking about like it sounded like it was already a challenge, but yeah, now that climate is coming in, and by climate we're talking about increased heat, increased rain, lack of, I guess, the economy itself, the labor they have to be employed by, it's changing because you can't work during the day because it's too hot. Also, your farms and those things are also becoming more unproductive. So it's not that would you agree or disagree that the infrastructure of the slums is not getting worse? It's the conditions of the livelihoods that's getting worse, or are both getting worse?
I can say it's both. It's both, and there's a connection, like you mentioned. The people who farm up country, no rains, they're expecting rains, it doesn't come. Nowadays, they are not sure whether the rains are going to come in March, in February. Are they going to be less or more? With that lack of food security, definitely people in the informal settlement will feel it because now the price of food will go higher. So the infrastructure within the informal settlements. Now, what happens when the farmer doesn't have a good yield? Probably his son will move into the city to look for what is the alternative. So the slums are getting congested. The spaces which were left probably for public utilities, these are spaces where children can play football, can play this. They're also getting occupied. People are building up to the river. So the infrastructure is getting worse. And I think it's a combination of both.
Now, you mentioned community-led development earlier, and I note that on your website, you talk a lot about inclusive and resilient communities. Can you talk about, I guess, how do you define that? Because in a way, when you describe the current situations and you talk about the solutions that you're trying to provide, or the platform you're providing, inclusion and resilience for me seems so far away, Right. It feels like you're struggling even to get the basics done. So how do you define inclusive and resilient when it comes to the work that you're doing? And is it different than how I would view it in terms of like, a Western mindset of where we have all the basics already covered, and therefore inclusive and resilient is about protecting what we have and make sure everyone's covered? Like how do you look at those two words, and what's the role that they play in the solutions that you're delivering?
Definitely the way you look at it. Like I mentioned, I don't think I had mentioned this. For us, climate looked like a Western problem. It looked like a Northern problem. And people in Africa, I think for a long time, we have been ignorant when we hear about climate change. We thought of snow melting somewhere in the North Pole. But now that it has caught up with us, we are realizing, oh shit, we are also in it. It's affecting us. We can no longer take it for granted. So for us, when we talk inclusion, I'll give you a practical example. When government is doing a development project, let's say housing, when we say inclusion is how can the communities that this development are targeting be involved, number one, in the designing of the project, even in the designing of the financing mechanisms, even the architectural designs, even in the implementation stage, how that what we call inclusion. How do they involve from one to two? Apart from just bringing somebody from China, they don't ask questions. They do rapid. They do the 20 floors. Guys, everything is ready. So we have Wi-Fi for you that will pay this amount of money. We have piped gas that will pay this amount of money. You have electricity that will pay this amount of money. You are not supposed to bring your own furniture. We'll bring furniture for you that you're supposed to pay for this amount of money. So when you talk resilience is, let's say, for example, Madare, how do we involve, when there was flooding 2 years ago in Madare, what is the government response? Can you bulldoze anything that is in the 30-meter buffer zone? So, but how would I describe resilience? So you guys, every year you get a pounding from the rains. How do we now work together to make sure this doesn't happen again? So one is we don't want to every year innovate ways of moving to higher ground or make sure we channel the water elsewhere. How do we come up with community consultations? How do we come up with a holistic approach to look at the entire ecosystem? We look at housing, we look at the flood, we look at the drain infrastructure, we look at the sewer infrastructure, we look at security, we look at public spaces. These spaces are enough for everybody. The problem is that they are poorly planned. So for me, inclusion and resilience is that. How do you come with communities that they look at what are the local available materials for housing? What is our game plan on heat? What is the game plan on energy? What is our game plan of recycling both solid and liquid waste? What is our game plan on just basic spaces for our children to play? So for me, that is look at the entire ecosystem. But now we have all this very siloed development. You will find the water people are doing something in their corner, both civil society and government, the people who work on that doing something else. It's not holistic, and civil society, all these entities are not speaking to each other.
So you have a lot of complex realities, conflicting structures, and stakeholders that aren't necessarily aligned. But you've been in the space a long time. So where do we start to fix this problem? Like, you've been in the space a long time. What's one problem that everyone agrees on and that you're seeing progress being made against?
Let's ask, where do we agree? We agree that something needs to be done about the growth of slums. Something needs to be done. Everybody agrees that. Civil society, academia, churches, and there are all these strategies that never get implemented. There are all these papers written that get published in nice glossy magazines. There are all these government papers and strategies that never get implemented. Number two, the solutions are there. The solutions are there. I'm only the starting point. The starting point let's start at the community level. How do you want to live? How do you want to relate? How do you want to work with your city? And how do you now, number two, bring all stakeholders? Let us agree. This is the plan. This plan might take 100 years. It may take 50 years, but at least we have a plan how we get ourselves out of this mess.
Okay. Now, when you're at COP, you're at these global events, when they're making presentations, they're making calls to action. How realistic are those? Like, are they rooted
They
in
are not,
actual practice and knowledge, or
they,
are they written by people who have no understanding of the actual problems?
I say there's a disconnect between the reality on the ground and is what is happening at those global platforms. There's a very big connect, the actions that are happening and the challenges and what needs to be done at the local level and what is this call for action. Yes, these spaces have turned into another talk shops that we will meet, call for action, blah, blah, blah. Everybody will be very fancy, they'll be signing. Then that's it. Whether it get implemented, we don't go back and measure. Wait a minute. This is what we agreed in Venom. How far have we gone in this? Zero. We create another call for action. So there's a disconnect between what is happening on the ground and the reality on the ground and what is being discussed. You hear people talk about big money. This government is pledging this amount of money. We never see the money, but there are very small voices like us who push. Look, this is where you should be putting money.
Yeah.
The
But
policies
does
are right.
it take a lot of money to solve the problem, or is money actually not the problem? It's just aligning the people to agree on what the
It is
priorities are.
money. For me, let me tell you, money has never been. I've never said that. I remember many years ago when I was young and I was organizing and traveling around organizing committees. Somebody asked, Joe, if I was to, what is this thing that I can help you that does not, and it's not money. We need a strategy. We need a plan. We need to align all these entities we need to align all this silo development. Yeah? We need the goodwill. We need to be serious about solving this problem.
So, if you could do, if you had a magic wand, what are the three things that you would do that you think would bring the most change for the people in these settlements? Like, what could you do? Three things that you think would really make that would really improve the outcomes.
Uh, Funny enough, when we are recruiting my program manager in Cape Town, I ask her, if you are president today, what are these three things that you would do just to change everything? I usually take it back to communities. How organized are you to push, not civil society? Change can only come when people push for it, not to be complacent, not to accept these are things. This is the way things are supposed to be. So for me, it's how do we get organized communities? Number two, it's there's so many. How do we coordinate this plan that we have of getting ourselves out of here? If you look at Europe and all over, where countries have transformed from this level to that level, they had a plan. There's goodwill. There was, and I think number three is how do we look at the local resources? I'm not a big fan of foreign aid. It's conditional. It won't solve all our problems. I want us to look in. How do we finance this? How do we prioritize this? Mm, yeah.
All right, switching a little bit here. I'm very fortunate. I'm surrounded by students quite often, and they're asking like, how can they get involved? So I'd like to talk about your career. You know, what is the work that you're doing? I mean, you're president of this network of, organizations. What's the work that you are actually doing on an individual basis, and how close are you to the communities? Is it your day to day in front of the communities, or are you finding that actually you're more of an office kind of like coordinator at this point? Like, what's your day to day look like? And when you're thinking about your work, what's the measurement of success for you in your work?
So my day to day, as I said before, I could describe myself as a community organizer. I was that for many, many years until 5 years ago, when they decided to make me president. They identified me just in case shit hit the fan. Yeah, there's somebody to blame. But on a day-to-day, for me, for a day-to-day, I'm involved in a lot of now working with the city. We work, as you know, our work is 100% donor funded. We get resources from SIDA, from philanthropies. Let's say, for example, now we are working to solve a drainage. We have done, if you look at our history, we have done mega project. We have done the railway relocation action plan. We have done Muturi special planning area. And now we scale down to have small catalytic projects in communities that have impact. So my role is how do you negotiate with the community? How do you bring in the city and to push the city? What is your contribution? This civil society organization, let's say we are working with IDRC Canada, is going to provide resources for us to put 100-meter drainage or 100-meter sewer infrastructure. What is the city's role in this? What are you going to bring on board? So we negotiate, the city will bring its technical personnel, it will bring this after this. So I'm also doing safe spaces for communities where we are putting containers just to mitigate against disasters, thinking how does this space become self-sustaining instead of training a few people for disaster preparedness within the community. So on a day-to-day basis, I'm involved with a lot of negotiations at country level, but at the global level, I'm also involved in a lot of fundraising efforts, representing the organizations, trying to push the housing agenda, secure tenure, the basic services, pushing for. So I'm involved in those. I try to balance the white collar work, which was not cut for me, obviously, but I also have to be. I also chair the board of a not-for-profit company that coordinates all this learning. So I have to understand how financing work. I have to understand how development work. I have to understand how budgets work. I have to understand what the law says on this. So it's a mix of that. But the first 40 years of my life, I was involved more in organizing communities around taking action.
Sure. Okay, so the work that you're doing, I mean, it sounds really, let's just say, to be honest, challenging, exhausting, probably very fulfilling when you see progress. So what keeps you going after so many years of this work? Because it's got to be exhausting. It's got to be like talking to government officials and negotiating. It's just got to you want to make more progress. So what keeps you going after all these years? Like, what is it that you're looking at? What is it that you're measuring? What's the emotion that really just keeps you going?
The fight for justice, it's not something you choose. That when I grow up, I want to fight for justice. It's something that chooses you. For me, if you would have asked 18-year-old Joe, what do you want to? I would say that I'll be walking all over slums, organizing communities. And for me, it's the little things. For me, the satisfaction that this community got connected with water, another community over there have a toilet facility, another community there, a youth group, they have something that they'll be getting income. Is those small victories. I thought this process is going to be romantic. I thought it's how hard is it to organize a community, get them to save money, build their own houses. But I found the reality is different. So I think I have learned to lower expectations. But for me, the small victories, the small battles that you win here and there, this community has tenure, there's a court order stopping an eviction of this community. This is what drives me on a day-to-day basis. Like the other mission is, how do you get as many people talking about the challenges of informality? Because you have all these people, they don't know where they don't know where the housekeeper goes to sleep. They don't know where the watchman goes to sleep. Is how do you get a lot of people, especially at government level, talking about informality and the challenges of informality and how we are going to solve them. We will get, and I think COVID taught us, the attitude is usually when there's a fire outbreak, when there's flooding, it is their problem. It is the slum dwellers. It doesn't affect us. But I think COVID was the big equalizer. We realized that whether you are in informal settlement, there's an interconnection. Initially in Nairobi, COVID was for the rich people. It was for the people who fly and they get COVID over there. But we realize we are equal. Some things are equal. So for me, is that how do you get a lot of people talking about challenges of informality and how we can solve them?
So if you were talking to someone who's young in the career, a young Joe, where would you offer that they begin this career? Because a lot of people are coming out of school. Some of them have the same experience you did, but most of them won't. But they see the injustice and they want to participate in this as a solution provider. Like, where do they get started? Where should they begin their careers? And what are the skills they should acquire to be successful?
Number one, I will tell you, if you decide to fight for justice, for fight for equal rights, to fight for basic services, if you decide to fight inequality, you are going to be very, very poor. You'll have the bare minimum just to survive, to feed you and for your family. So you are not going to make shitloads of money here. There will be no holiday for you in Miami or Jamaica or the Bahamas. So that's number one. Number two is what I do to a lot of young people. We work with a number of universities, both foreign and local. I tell them, yes, okay, you have your master's degree from Cornell or from UC Berkeley or from New York University. If you are coming to Mathare and you want to do something and somebody has paid for you or you are working for this organization that want to have an impact here, first of all, when you enter the gates of Mathare, you surrender that master's degree at the gate. You enter there with a blank, I'm here to be schooled. I'm here to learn. I'm here to be one with the community. First of all, you have to be one with the community. You have to understand the problem you are trying to solve. You have to understand the mindset of this community. Don't come in as a savior or a missionary or just come like, I want to work with you. So first of all, if you understand the problem you're trying to solve, understand the mindset. Understand these are not people who have been sitting down just waiting for you to come. These are people who have tried everything, but the system is rigged against them. So after you learn, after you work with the community, they have taught you community planning, they have taught you community architecture, they have taught you this is how we solve this problem. Then you apply your knowledge. You ask yourself,